Man, system sellers. You ever buy a console you don't find particularly pleasant to use just because of one exclusive? For me, that would be Titanfall, a game alongside Watch Dogs that had the consensus of, it's decent, it's got potential, the sequel should be good. Fast forward 2 years later and lo and behold, we're getting a sequel to both Titanfall and Watch Dogs, both attempting to capitalise on the original's potential. Titanfall 2 looks to try building on the original by including a single-player campaign. The method of presenting a story campaign within a traditional multiplayer setup was a sore spot of the original, basically shoehorning story tidbits, exposition, and even less than a handful of cutscenes to contextualize an otherwise traditional multiplayer match in order to unify the story campaign with its online-only requirements, which in practice ended up being an oil and water situation. It just didn't mix. So first on the menu of changes for Titanfall 2 is adding a single-player story campaign about the bond between the pilot and the Titan, human and technology, man and machine, and to be honest, I'm not feeling this idea of a Titanfall campaign. I understand the reluctance behind a multiplayer-only game, but is a single-player campaign really something we want when Call of Duty campaigns, despite being well-polished popcorn frills, ends up not being played by the majority of players, and the less I say about Battlefield campaigns, the better. So after going through the tutorial, there was a time trial course which harkened back to Modern Warfare 2's pit level. Before I even touched anything to do with the multiplayer, I was spending a good amount of time replaying this one course over and over, constantly trying to beat the leaderboard times, and I found it to make better use of Titanfall's momentum-based mechanics, where the ability to make quick restarts if I screwed up a run felt encouraging to keep trying, and that made me think how much better this could be for single-player longevity than a campaign if the resources and time spent there was used with different courses and challenges that could not only sharpen skills but provide a fun, highly replayable set of challenges. And Titanfall's emphasis on momentum is distinguished enough from other shooters in a way that I think would be better suited for this kind of direction. Anyways, after spending more time than I should with this mode, I eventually loaded up multiplayer, spending as much time as I could in both stages of the test, and my first impressions are, well, quite positive, but with a few caveats. It does, for the most part, build on the first game in ways that strengthen its best aspects, although there are some questionable design choices that doesn't give a good impression on where this game is going. When you enter multiplayer, you're greeted with a nice clean menu of sub-menus for modes, options, and customization. What's different for loadouts in Titanfall 2 is now instead of 3 weapons, 1 main, 1 sub, and 1 anti-Titan weapon, pilots can only hold 2 weapons, meaning you have to tailor which kind of weapon you want depending on your loadout style. New weapons and abilities get unlocked as you play through one alteration of the traditional experience point system I actually quite like, where instead of earning XP based on performance and whatnot, you level up via a merit system where winning, completing challenges, and leveling up your weapons earns you merits that count towards level progression, which helps make challenges feel a bit more worthwhile. Speaking of leveling up weapons, each gun has its own progression leading to their own specific unlocks, though it's somewhat cheapened by credits earned through gameplay which can be used to unlock attachments and weapons without having to earn them through gameplay, and I bloody hope it doesn't lead to microtransactions because we sure could use less of them in games nowadays. As for the game itself, out of the 3 modes on offer in this pre-alpha, I found Bounty Hunter to be the closest to attrition despite not carrying over the same chaotic nature. In this new mode, each team has to take out different waves of either Titan bounties or sets of enemy AIs. Any kills contributes to your bounty currency, which gets halved if you get killed, so in order to add it to your team's score, you have to cash them in at banks in between waves. And this mode actually does make good use of Titanfall's momentum-based mechanics where you have to make mad dashes in between points. And the one issue I have with this mode specifically is that certain enemy types often take a bit too much damage to go down even with anti-Titan weapons. Yet the main issue I have with this pre-alpha overall is that while Boomtown and forward-based Kodai offer multi-layered yet tight map design with plenty of ways to quickly zip around the map, Homestead's more open environment has long stretches of flat land with not a lot to wall run on. And while certain abilities like the grapple hook or stim make it faster to get around, I shouldn't need it to circumvent this kind of incongruous map design. Speaking of the grapple hook, I mean, I'm a bit of a sucker for anything with the grapple hook that lets me zip and swing around like Spider-Man, and while the grapple hook in Titanfall 2 took some time to get the hang of, it added a lot of momentum to the already fast-paced gameplay as I zipped and swung about, creating moments that caused me to shout, "Yes, holy shit, did you see that?" When the map design encapsulates it, it's an incredibly neat addition. But even a grapple hook seems to be redundant by how scaled back this feels to the point of barely having any soul of the original. Bringing in Titans is no longer determined by a countdown timer that would have been detracted as you score kills. Now you can only bring in Titans by filling up a percentage, making kills mandatory if you want to use the Titan. While it did encourage me to be more methodical with Titans by frequently jumping out to grab power cells in order to regain health and shields, the dynamic David and Goliath confrontation of taking on a Titan as a pilot feels more sparse now. Even when you're using a Titan, some of the aforementioned level design means there are long stretches of running to get where you want to go. The pre-alpha of Titanfall 2 feels like a 2-step forward, 1-step back situation. While the soul of the first game is still somewhat there, some of the levels and mechanics that don't support it make the experience feel somewhat hampered. And that seems to be the consensus after Respawn confirmed the changes they'd be making. And if what we haven't seen manages to embrace the spirit of the original more, then I hope I'll be more willing to stand by for Titanfall.
The Titan's ready.